Hello, welcome to another episode of Set Musings. So we are up to Born of the Gods. 165 cards in the set. It's a small set. Second set from the Theros block. 60 commons, 60 uncommons, 35 rares, 10 mythic rares. Themes, mechanics, keywords, abilities to look out for are gods, heroes, monsters, enchantment creatures, inspired, tribute, bestow, devotion, heroic and scry. So you'll see there's a number of new keywords abilities there, but also some carryover from previously. So I'm just going to scroll through to give us an idea of the general look of the set aesthetically. And you'll notice again certain cards, particularly the enchantment creatures, have that sort of sparkly area down here. And it's interesting because there's definitely, within certain pieces of artwork, there's sparkliness to the artwork as well. And I'm just looking to see, there's that's often echoed on the cards that are enchantment creatures. Not necessarily always, but there's a large number, I think, is the case, looking at it. And as we go down, you'll see we start to get into the multicoloured. We do have a 5-colour creature here. Oh, sorry. We know that is an enchantment creature. Manticore, chromanticore. I wonder how tempted they were to, instead of just having this as a regular enchantment creature, have it as a legendary. And you can see there's a number of 2-colour gods. We move into some artifacts, and then the remainder of those Scrylands as well, which we started with in the previous set. So, moving back up, let's start to slice and dice this in the usual way. So 5 reprints, and you'll see there is some, with some of these, definitely some sort of set specific artwork. $160 new cards. So, starting off with all the colourless stuff, we have 6 cards that fall into that category, all artifacts of some description or another. Monocoloured, we got 143, so you can see that's the vast majority of the set is monocoloured. Excuse my gurgling tummy. 13 cards which are more than one colour, are multicoloured, and you can see the majority of these are 2-coloured except for the chromanticore, which is 5-colour Wooburg. So moving through the different different colours of creature, just to see what creature types, if you're interested in tribal, maybe reside in certain monocoloured or coloured combinations. So creature spells that have white in the casting cost. As always, looks like we're seeing a lot of humans and a lot of soldiers here. You can see there's a few of those enchantment creatures. And then we've got things like Griffin and Pegasus. Obviously, in terms of the creature subtypes, you're going to see the sort of creatures that you associate with, you know, Greek mythology theme. We've actually got a number of cats in here as well in white. And then we're moving on to the multicolours, and we've got, looks like mainly gods here, and obviously we're going to see this manticore in every colour as we go through. So 21 blue creatures, and sphinxes, sirens, again humans, you know, probably across all colours here. In terms of the regular things we see in blue in other sets, we've got merfolk here, and other, of course, thematic creature subtypes like krakens and serpents and so on, chimera. Notice a number of wizards in blue, which isn't unusual. And then looks like we've got slightly more colours, that 2 colour cards that share blue as one of the colours. So in addition to the 2 gods, we've got a zombie siren and a merfolk. Moving on to black, 23 cards. So outside of this set, or outside of the block, you know, you might expect to see things like zombies and vampires in black, but we'll see here. We've got a few zombies. Skeleton. I'm just working out a warrior is a thing. Not necessarily, I don't think. Demons, spirits. Yeah, there's quite a number of zombies here. Harpies. The Minotaur. And again, a couple of gods, and then of course we see this zombie again because it was a blue-black creature. And then we've got this Minotaur shaman in black-red. Moving on to red. More humans, Cyclops, spirits, Minotaurs again, dragons, phoenix. I think in the previous set we saw some satyrs in red, and that's still the case here. Also notice, I'm sure we'll come back to this, we've got a number of cards where the casting cost is in one colour and there's an activation cost in another colour. Again, 2 gods that share red as a colour, because all the gods in here I believe are all 2 colour gods. And then a Minotaur shaman and a Centaur warrior, again, which share a colour with another. So in green we have this badger, spiders, boars, centaurs, beast hydras. Yeah, we saw hydras in the previous set, didn't we? Wolf, another centaur warrior, another satyr. So clearly satyrs are in red and green. Snake, hydras. Number of warriors as well, in addition to their other creature subtype. And I think we've seen all of these already because of the presence of another colour. So a couple of gods and a couple of non-gods and then chromatical. So it would appear that there's definitely a fewer number of 2 colour cards in whites with respect to creatures at least. Okay, so moving on to other things. So again, large spells. So in this case we're using that sort of Eldrazi watermark that was established in the original Zendikar block. So anything above 6, so 7 and above. So 8 cards fit into that. We're starting off at what? 7 mana and going up to 8. So, you know, not a massive difference. But no surprise to see, you know, we've got a couple of Krakens, a demon, a giant, and this enchantment creature, boar as well, 6/5 boar. So I mentioned that enchantments were a thing in the set, as in the previous set. 43 cards that include enchantments somewhere in the type. And again, we've got these hybrid types as well in the set, which I'm sure we'll see some of these other cards come up as I slice through the set. Doesn't look like we've got them in all of the 2-colour combinations. In fact, it looks like they're only in allied colours. So we've got white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, green, white. So there actually is 2 in white, blue. But you can see already a pattern emerging here. So we appear to have each of the gods are in these 2 colours. Okay, I thought I'd look at Minotaurs. I didn't specifically mention that, I don't think, as a theme and mechanic, but I know it was a theme in the first set and I wanted to see what spilled over. And obviously of particular interest is the ones that are common or uncommon, because you're more likely to see those in a limited card pool. So yeah, if you wanted to go with a Minotaur tribal, you could. What are the rares? So we got Inspired. Looks like Inspired is a thing in Minotaurs, and we'll come on to Inspired in a moment, I'm sure. There's also, this is interesting, so Minotaur spells you cast cost black and a red, less to cast. This effect reduces only amount of coloured mana you pay. Oh, there we go. We've got Inspired. So with Inspired, you can see here the common denominator is whenever it becomes tapped. So if we scroll through, you'll see they're all of a type of creature. And when they become tapped, you get something. Something happens. So you can see whenever the... I'm sorry, I said when it becomes untapped. Not tapped, but whenever it becomes untapped. Yeah, something happens. So you can see there's a variety of different things. However, some of them are stacked up with a cost. So, like this one becomes untapped, and you can choose to pay 2 and a green, and if you do, you get a token. There's another one here as well, and here, and here. I think we might be seeing a pattern. Tribute. So with tribute, you can see it has a number after it. So using this as an example, tribute 2. As this creature enters the battlefield, an opponent of your choice may place 2 +1/+1 counters on it. And then you get this second thing. So if the tribute was paid, oh sorry, I'm getting this around the wrong way. If the tribute wasn't paid, then you can see there's a number of different consequences here. So, you know, the idea is the creature comes into play, an opponent has to make a choice. Do they pay a tribute? If they do pay a tribute, then you've got this number of counters based on the value next to the tribute. If they choose not to pay the tribute, then something else happens. So with this one, if the tribute wasn't paid, it gets haste until end of turn. And you can see there's a variety of consequences if an opponent opts not to pay the tribute. Again, if they do pay it, they get a number of the creature, you on your creature get a number of counters based on the value after the tribute. Bestow. So, yeah, seen this before. So if you cast this card for its bestow cost, so it's an alternative casting cost, you can choose to cast it instead of the regular casting cost. It's an aura spell with enchant creature. It becomes a creature again if it's not attached to a creature. So you can either just cast it and it's a creature. You can cast it for its bestow cost and it becomes an aura, and you can attach it to a creature. And if it becomes unattached for any reason, like the creature dies, then it becomes a creature again. And I think with all of these, not surprisingly, the bestow cost is considerably higher, and this one's one away. So there's a few a little bit closer, and of course it really does, I suppose, depend on the sort of degree of this enchantment. And I'm looking to see here, like, what's the difference between when the creature is a creature and when it's an aura spell. And you can see here's a good example. So if this is just a regular creature, this in and of itself has double strike. If you're using it as an aura, the enchanted creature that it's attached to gets +1/+ and has double strike. Now you can see that's not always the same. They're not doubling up necessarily here, but I think all of these in some capacity, when they're behaving as auras, have a pump ability in them that they bestow. Devotion, so this is all tied in with the number of the certain colour of mana that you have in the cost of permanents you control. So you can see here we've got, for devotion, so on this one, each white in the mana cost of permanents you control counts towards your devotion to white. So one in white, one in blue, got a couple in black, one in red, two in green, and you can see they're basically scaling on that devotion. When we get to the multicoloured cards, it gets interesting because you can see here it's all of the gods from this particular set, and it's your devotion to both colours. And here it's being used to decide whether or not the card is not a creature as the trigger. We've got heroic, so whenever you cast a spell that targets a particular card, again something happens or you get something. And of course that's interesting in this set with the other types of cards you've got and how they synergize with one another. Scry's in here still. So simply with scry, you look at the top however many cards that's in as part of this scry. So this one's scry 2. So here it's 2 cards of your library. Then put any number of them in the bottom of your library and the rest on top in any order. So you can see with these it's sort of stapled to a number of different things. In this case you're seeing it on lands, on sorceries, on instants, on creatures as a activated ability, instant sorceries, and there was enchantment aura with it as well. And another creature here where the scry is triggered off this heroic. So, interesting combination there. So now onto the cycles. Cycle of Nyx spawns. Is that the correct term? Or Nyx spawn? 5 common creatures with the Bestow mechanic and no additional abilities. So yeah, they just all have Bestow on them. And they're also enchantment creatures. So time for the sparkly border, or inner border, whatever you want to call it. Sparkly frame. Cycle of inspired creatures, so 5 uncommon creatures with the inspire mechanic, creating creature enchantment tokens for 2 and a colour when untapping, and the colour is the same as the colour in the casting cost. We've got a cycle of archetypes, so 5 uncommon enchantment creatures, 1 of each colour. Each archetype has 2 abilities, one that grants a keyword ability to all of your creatures, including itself, and then one that makes your opponent's creatures lose that same keyword. So with white, first strike, blue, it's flying, black, it's death touch, red is trample, and green is hexproof. Uncommon tributes, so 5 uncommon creatures with the tribute mechanic, so there's a cycle of those. This is an incomplete cycle, so enemy coloured activated ability uncommons. They have an ability that requires an enemy colour. The cycle goes in the opposite direction from the similar cycle of commons from Theros, and the cycle misses its blue member with a green activated ability. So some other auras that form a cycle. These are tapping auras, so 5 common auras that grant the ability with tap in its cost. So a cost and then a tap for most of them except one down here. It's just a tap and then add 1 mana or any colour to your mana pool. Right, Devotion X spells, so 5 uncommon cards that scale according to your devotion to that colour. We've got a cycle of fated spells, so 5 rare instant spells with a cost that includes 3 of a particular colour. These spells let you scry 2 when you play them on your own turn. You can see there if it's your turn. Cycle of gold uncommons, so cycle of 5 uncommon allied gold cards with colours matching the gods of the set. Now in the the MTG wiki article, I don't see any mention of draft indicators here. But clearly you can see that some of these might, inspire you, excuse the pun, to go in a certain direction if you drafted them. And then we've got the Cycle of Gods. So these, they're 5 multicoloured mythic rare legendary enchantment creatures, that's a mouthful, that each embody one of the gods of Theros. Each card has a low casting cost, but is not a creature until your devotion to their 2 colours is 7 or more. They're all indestructible and have 1 static ability. And we notice this with the other gods is, relatively speaking, the casting cost is fairly low because it doesn't become a creature until, in this case, the devotion to the 2 colour gets triggered. So we saw a similar thing in the previous set with the monocoloured gods. And you can see again there's these sort of abilities here as well. So of course, whilst it's an enchantment, you'll benefit from this, unless there's some condition there that stops that from happening. But you don't get the benefit of this being a large creature until you cross that devotion threshold. So 10 mythic rares. We have, let's just check this. So if out of 10 of these, 5 are the gods, what do we have left? So we have mono white legendary creature cat soldier in the form of Primaz. We have champion of stray souls. We have flame wreathed phoenix. We have a planeswalker, and we have chromanticore. So those are our mythic rares. I think I mentioned before we have 3 lands in the set, and these sort of make up the remaining scry lands that we saw in the first set. So in terms of legendaries across the board, so of course this is a mixture of legendary creatures, legendary enchantment creatures, and legendary planeswalkers, and any other legendary artifacts, and so on. So again, we've got the 5 out of the 9 are the gods. As I mentioned already when we looked at the mythics, there's this legendary creature here in white. We've got a legendary creature in blue that isn't a mythic. We have Kiora, which is a mythic and is a legendary planeswalker. And then we have another rare here, which is Hero's Podium. So each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other legendary creature you control. So obviously encouraging you to play legendaries. 5 colour gods or something. So 67 creatures in the set. Sorry, did I say 67? I meant to say 97. 97 creatures in the set. We have 28 of these enchantment creatures. So obviously, if you look down here, these are going to be a subset of those creatures. So within the... Now again, some of these have triple types on them, legendary enchantment creatures as well. So we may see some of these cropping up in other slices. But of course that would be a subset of our creatures. We have 15 auras. just the regular auras, which aren't any other additional enchantment types. So 2 in white, 4 in blue, 3 in black, 3 in red, 2 in green, and a multicolour. A single artifact creature, which is this Pillar of War, which is artifact creature golem, and has defender, but as long as Pillar of War is enchanted, it can attack as though it didn't have defender. So it's a 3/3 for 3, and often you'll find that with artifact creatures, historically, the casting cost is considerably higher versus the power toughness for other creatures that are on that sort of, on a curve with casting cost versus power toughness. But in this case, it's a 3/3 for 3, but of course the problem is it does need to be enchanted. So that's how it's nerfed, I suppose. But in this set, makes a lot of sense and could work out really well, I suppose. 2 interesting pieces of equipment, particularly in a set where, you've got the tappity tap business going on of things being triggered when stuff is untapped. Gorgon's Head, which is a quick creature, has Death Touch, and then this one, in case of the tapping side of things, which is Siren the Song Lyre, where a quick creature has 2 tap target creature, equip 2. Then we have 3 artifacts, although one is a legendary, which we've seen already. The ones we haven't seen necessarily are Astral Cornucopia and Springleaf Drum. Springleaf Drum's a reprint. I'm not sure, is it Astral Cornucopia is new, although it was reprinted after the set in Commander 2016 and consequently appeared in that anthology as well, because one of the 2016 decks was in there with it. Okay, our instance, what sort of things are we seeing here that might be stapled together in interesting ways? Okay, so we've got a mass removal for creatures and planeswalkers with Scry on it, although it's conditional. Damage prevention, again, this sort of conditionality. Tap down, strange word, it's damage prevention, but it's incredibly specific. 7 damage. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains lifelink. So yeah, we've got this sort of combat trick in white. Protection, tokens, counter spells for creatures or auras. Interesting. So you're giving a target creature the ability to bounce another permanent. Okay. Tap down with Scry stapled on. A counter spell with an X condition on it. These are always interesting in black. So these ones that deplete the power toughness, you often see these in sets at instant speed. So target creature and all other creatures with the same name as that creature get -3/-3 and until end of turn. Eye Gouge, you often see a -1/-1 type spell. So some interesting combat tricks you can do there. And very flavourful as well. Graveyard Recursion, Death Touch. Yeah, this business of dealing damage equal to its power to another target creature. These high damage spells as well, that are a fairly high casting cost. It's interesting, isn't it? You've got this thing of instants that give a creature an ability which then they have to tap. So it gives a creature the ability to ping, but it's all creatures actually. That one's target creature. This is all creatures, so it's turning all creatures into pingers, or all of your creatures. Asymmetric pump spell, 2 damage spell, and a 3 damage to the controller. That's interesting. An XX pump spell based on devotion. Tokens, indestructible, +1, another combat trick. So I wonder if it's the case that, would it be the case that all the colours have some sort of combat trick in them? Yeah, it looks like it. And then we've got this 2-colour instant here. Puts counters on target creatures. And of course, good old artifact and enchantment. Although this is interesting, it actually tucks the artifact or enchantment into the owner's library. Well, that's cool. Bit of a different thing to do. So, sorcery speeds, what are we seeing here? It was very interesting actually to see mass removal at instant speed, or creature and planeswalker removal. Right. Exile target tapped card. Exiling artifacts and enchantments. Enchantment tutor. Bounce. Oh, from the graveyard. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So we've got return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand, and or destroy target enchantment. Divination was in here. So card draw. This was a cool card. It's really specific to a certain type of EDH deck actually, where you've got this ability to return all creatures to their owners except for krakens, leviathans, octopuses and serpents. Destroy target untapped creature. -2/-2, and it's another, you see this in black, these spells that act as mass removal for smaller creatures. And this one's -2/-2. You often see -1/-1. This one's got scry stapled to it as well. So obviously very effective against tokens, a token deck where whatever the pumping mechanism in the token deck, if there is one, hasn't come online yet. So they're still, in reach of removal with a spell like this. Exile target creature. So this is like swapping out a creature. Sanguimancy is in here, where you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is the devotion to black. 3 damage with scry. 3 damage that's splittable. There's our 1 damage sorcery spell with scry on it. And again, 1 damage to each creature that opponents control. So that's interesting. Oh, random type spell. So, chaos spell in red. Lure type spell, whatever you want to call this. Plus, so we got a pump and trample. Sorcery speed. Yeah, trouble with these, sorcery speed pump spells, of course you see them coming. Oh, we've got our basic land search in green. And hate against flying as well in green. Okay, back to the full set. So, price wise, so Brimers is the most expensive card in the set, and it is $14.16. And we got Xenagos, 13. So we're probably going to see a lot of the Mythics being the most expensive in the set by the look of this. It's at 13, yeah, the gods. So at this point they've actually dropped below the $10 mark, but you can see there's the other god. Then we've got the Planeswalker. So basically all the Mythics are floating to the top. Courser of Crufix has been reprinted quite a few times. I'm trying to remember if this went through a period of very reasonably expensive. I can't remember. Spirit of the Labyrinth and so on. Oh, there's another god actually. Wow, that's cheap. And then we've got Astral Cornucopia. It's funny, some of these cards, I could have sworn at the time they were quite expensive, but maybe not. Other than that, they've come down quite a bit. And then on to the ones that are popular, or more popular in EDH. Some of these obviously make a lot of sense. So we've got the Temples, we've got Corsair, Springleaf Drum, Xenagos here, out of the like legendary creature gods. That seems to be the most played, or at least according to the EDH Rec database. Whelming Wave, yeah, I did expect to see that higher. Kalmantra, and so on. Still Cornucopia. I've seen that come up on a few deck lists. And then we get these enchantment creatures as well. Moving on to this. Put on one cat to take with vigilance. I wonder how popular that is. Have a quick look. Only 161 decks. Obviously there's better kitties as legendary creatures. Okay. And then just the usual thing. So if we look down at the bottom of this article, let's have a look and see what they did in terms of precons. So you can see this balance between allied and enemy. So we've got 3 allied coloured decks, 2 enemy coloured decks. We've moved on now, and this was true previous sets. We're now down to a single event deck, so we're getting pretty close to when they pulled event decks completely, but we're already down to into several sets now that are using just having one event deck. Underworld Herald, not sure if I've got that or not. I'm not sure whether I kept up with the event decks. I know I was sort of trying to buy at least one in all the sets, but I don't remember when it went down to one, whether I just carried on buying a single one or just gave up completely. So the intro packs, we've got white, blue, one with the Bestow mechanic, where the rares are Silent Sentinel and Gift of Immortality. We've got a blue-black inspired themed deck, where we've got Arbiter of the Ideal and Curse of the Swine. Remember with these as well, we're on to the second set of the block, so it's going to be pulling in cards from the previous set as well. And I seem to remember when we moved from intro decks to theme decks, which is quite a while ago in terms of the sets we've been going through, I seem to remember at some point theme decks also started featuring like cards from the core set as well, if my memory serves me correctly. We've got a green-black graveyard inspired deck where we've got Eater of Hope and Night Howler. Forged in Battle, so red-white heroic mechanic. And of course with all of these you got 2 boosters as well. That's got Forge Stoker Dragon and Labyrinth Champion in it. And then we've got green-red Tribute with Nessian Wild's Ravager and Mistcutter Hydra. Now none of these are doing anything particularly in the lands area, they're just using like regular good old basics there. nothing particularly expensive cropping up there. Then we've got our event deck. So this is the Underworld Herald deck. Yeah, I do recognise this text box, so maybe I do have it. Combines aggressive swarm of creatures with devastating spells that destroy your opponent's forces. So anything that would be currently in standard at the point this deck was released would be fair game for the deck. So it's not going to pull simply from the block and maybe core set. It's going to go beyond that and go back. So if I was to go through this, which I don't tend to, you'll see a number of cards that might pop up, which clearly you might recognise from, the previous set. It's always difficult to tell here because obviously it pops up the most recent printing, but there's certainly one at least that we recognise from our previous block that would still have been in standard at that point. And of course you get many more rares in these decks and a sideboard, which would have been cards that were relevant to the meta when the makeup of this deck was decided. So that's another problem, is of course the meta might change or might have changed in that period. And then just as an introduction for the upcoming Commander Durdle, I've opted to go with Phoenix. I had a couple of different things I thought I might do, but I thought I might as well choose one of the gods. I was tempted to go with the mono white legendary and did a quick run through of that, but I just wanted to go with Phoenix. Looked interesting. Creatures you control have tap target player puts the X top cards of her library into his or her graveyard, where X is this creature's toughness. So I wanted to see where the algorithm would take us. Is it going to go down like a multi-mill strategy? Is it going to go down the case of obviously synergizing with spells that do other things when players are forced to put cards in their graveyard? Are there cards that leverage the fact that there's going to be a whole ton of cards in players' graveyards as a result of this effect? Of course, it's 3 blue-black to get out, but that ability does come online regardless of whether it's an aura or an as an enchantment or a god. Enchantment aura or a god. Or a creature. Yeah. So, there we have it. So I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thanks for watching and bye for now.